On July 14, 2025, the U.S. Navy revealed what defense circles had been whispering for months. The USS Preble, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, now sails with Helios, a high-energy laser that strikes at the speed of light. In May, it erased a drone in seconds. In June, it burned through solid steel. And today, it's heading straight into the South China Sea, the most contested waters on Earth. And in the next few moments, you'll see three things that change warfare forever. Why electricity has become ammunition, how this beam locks onto a target through the Navy's Aegis system, and why enemies are left with no proof they were ever hit. Stay with us as we uncover how this invisible weapon works, the battles it has already fought, and the game-changing future it signals. Helios sounds like a name out of science fiction, but behind the acronym lies something very real: the high-energy laser with integrated optical dazzler and surveillance. Built by Lockheed Martin, it doesn't just fire a beam, it combines three roles in one box. First, the fiber laser, raw destructive power able to cut through steel. Second, the optical dazzler, designed to blind enemy sensors without firing a shot. And third, the integration, a system fully wired into the Navy's Aegis combat brain. One package, three capabilities, all hidden on the deck of a destroyer. The heart of Helios is its fiber laser, multiple light channels woven into a single coherent beam. Imagine the energy needed to power 60 homes, funneled into a dot smaller than a pencil eraser. That dot can burn through drones, small boats, or delicate sensors at ranges beyond 2 kilometers. It isn't a bullet, it's precision heat at the speed of light. But raw power alone doesn't explain why Helios matters. Initial models start at 60 kilowatts of continuous energy, with room to double on larger hulls. That makes it perfect for the threats navies actually face today. Reconnaissance drones mapping positions, swarms of quadcopters trying to overwhelm defenses, and small explosive-packed boats rushing in at high speed. And already, the Navy's parallel Hellcat program is reaching for the next rung on the ladder, lasers strong enough to strike cruise missiles. The secret isn't just in the beam, it's in the integration. Helios doesn't feel like a strange new weapon to sailors. It behaves like a missile in the ship's architecture. A radar track passes to Aegis. The electro-optical tracker refines it. The fire control loop closes. The laser fires. It's a new tool inside an old system, which means the Navy can fight with it tomorrow, not decades from now. And the timing of its arrival is no accident. Right now, the economics of war have flipped upside down. $2,000 drones are forcing navies to fire interceptors that cost millions. Congress calls this the Navy's most dangerous vulnerability. Helios changes that math instantly. Electricity becomes ammunition. Magazine depth no longer depends on steel canisters in a launch cell. It lasts as long as the ship can generate power, and the world is watching. Britain's Dragonfire has already burned through targets. Israel's Iron Beam is nearly operational against rockets and drones. Germany mounts its own frigate demonstrator. China parades its Silent Hunter. Russia brags about the Peresvet. The race is no longer about who has a laser. It's about who can scale it, integrate it, and fire it again and again without running out. But here's the catch. Every great weapon comes with limits, and Helios is about to collide with its most dangerous enemy, the air itself. And that enemy is the air itself, humidity, turbulence, and salt spray waiting to scatter the beam before it even strikes. Helios does it by weaving together bundles of industrial fiber lasers, each tuned to a slightly different wavelength.
The test was meant to verify and validate the functionality, performance, and capability of Helios laser system.
Combined into one, the channels create a single, coherent beam strong enough to carve into steel or fry delicate electronics. The beam leaves the ship through a stabilized telescope, an optic designed to stay locked while the destroyer pitches and rolls in open water. From there, it rides across humid air, salt spray, and turbulence, holding its shape as long as the targeting system keeps its focus, like a flashlight cutting through fog, only sharper and deadlier. The goal is to pour concentrated heat into a small point on the target until something vital fails, whether it's a sensor, a control line, or the skin of a drone. Think of it less as a lightning strike and more as a blowtorch at extreme distance. Every second counts, and Helios was built to hold that second longer than any enemy can survive. The critical factor is dwell time. Hold the beam steady for a few seconds, and heat builds faster than the target can shed it. A battery vents. A sensor blacks out. A control surface cracks. Helios's integration with Aegis and its electro-optical tracker makes sure the beam stays glued to its mark. The enemy isn't always the target, it's the air itself. Humidity and aerosols scatter light, turbulence bends it, clouds can swallow it entirely. That's why Helios isn't a single shield, but part of a layered defense. It needs those layers. because weather is the one opponent you can't shoot down. Even the beam heating its own path through the atmosphere, a phenomenon called thermal blooming, can spread energy away from the aim point. Doctrine accepts this. Lasers work best in clean conditions, and other weapons cover the rest. Keeping a laser alive on a ship takes more than pointing optics. Stable power, aggressive cooling, and rapid steering hardware form the backbone. And there's discipline built into the design. International law forbids weapons built to cause permanent blindness, so Helios's Dazzler is tuned to disable sensors while staying within safety rules. Commanders have options. Low-power dazzle as a warning, high-power beam for destruction. One system, many levels of response. But the real test isn't theory or design, it's combat, and that proof has already begun. And when it comes to speed, Helios plays in an entirely different league.
High-powered laser weapon called Helios from the USS Preble destroyer.
A missile takes seconds to launch and chase its target. A gun round chews through the air in bursts. A laser doesn't travel, it arrives. The moment the trigger is pulled, the energy is already on target. That speed matters in the moments when a drone pops up from low altitude or a fast boat breaks the horizon. The window between detection and impact can be measured in seconds, and every second the crew saves is another layer of survival. Helios shortens that reaction to nearly zero. Then comes the magazine. A destroyer's vertical launch cells hold a finite number of missiles. Once fired, they cannot be replaced until the ship returns to port. Helios doesn't drain that reserve. As long as the generators hum and the cooling system holds, the beam can fire again and again. The magazine is as deep as the ship's power plant, a concept naval planners call infinite shots. The math flips hardest when you look at cost. A single standard missile launch runs in the millions of dollars. Close-in weapon fire sprays tungsten into the sea at thousands per burst. Helios consumes electricity measured in single dollars per shot. The Navy's own research arm calls this the solution to its cost exchange crisis, where adversaries force million-dollar intercepts against $1,000 drones. Precision brings another advantage. A laser doesn't need to destroy an entire airframe or vessel. It can target a propeller blade, a sensor pod, or the vent of a lithium battery. The effect is the same. A drone tumbles, a small craft dies in the water, or a camera goes dark. The difference is the absence of collateral damage, a factor that matters in crowded seas where civilian traffic often sails alongside threats. The nightmare for commanders has always been the swarm. Dozens of small drones or boats converging at once, overwhelming traditional defenses by sheer numbers. Conventional systems can track and engage only a handful at a time, creating gaps an attacker can exploit. Helios thrives in that chaos. With rapid retargeting, every 2 or 3 seconds it can shift beams and take down the next target in line. What once looked like saturation becomes a queue, and the swarm dissolves into scattered wreckage. All of it comes down to dwell time. More power, sharper tracking, and cleaner air reduce the seconds needed on target, making engagement rates faster and faster. Every improvement means another drone erased before it closes the gap, another boat disabled before it reaches firing range. And the record of what these beams have already done is enough to rewrite expectations. The first proof came from USS Portland in 2020, when its demonstrator laser locked on a drone and burned it from the sky.
USS Portland. The warship is docked at Terminal 2 right now, and it's the first ship named after the Rose City.
The weapon class was in the 100 to 150 kilowatt range, and the Navy released the video itself, the first public evidence of a shipborne directed energy kill. A year later, Portland fired again, this time at a surface craft in the Gulf of Aden. It was a shot across the bow of history. For decades, lasers were relegated to labs and PowerPoint slides. That engagement showed they could work in salt air on a moving deck against a real target. It was less about the target destroyed and more about proving the ocean was no longer a barrier. The shift accelerated with Helios. In 2024, the Pentagon's own testing office confirmed that USS Preble had engaged an airborne target with the new system. The details were scarce by design. The Navy released a photo of the mount on deck but offered nothing about where or when the shot took place, or how many times it was repeated. That silence is not an oversight, it is a tactic. Performance envelopes, weather limits, and aim point tricks are gold to adversaries. Keeping them vague is as important as the laser itself. Still, the fact of the engagement is undeniable. A destroyer in fleet service fired its laser at a real airborne target and neutralized it. No exercise smoke, no staged demonstration. That admission alone marked Helios as operational, not experimental. Around the edges of the official record, rumors circulate. Reports of a Mohajer 6 reconnaissance drone falling from the sky over the Persian Gulf in June 2025. online claims of entire swarms dissolving quietly during unnamed exercises. They spread fast because they sound plausible. After all, the weapon exists, the ship sails with it, and drones do fall. But none of these stories are verifiable. The Navy does not confirm them, and adversaries have their own reasons to shape the narrative. The confirmed arc is still enough to shift doctrine. A drone kill in 2020, a surface strike in 2021, a destroyer firing Helios in 2024. 3 data points across 3 oceans that prove the physics works, the integration works, and the timeline is collapsing into the present. The question is no longer if lasers belong at sea. It is what limits, if any, remain untested. The intrigue lies in the gaps. Every silence, every photo without a caption, every denial of detail is itself a signal. The technology is maturing, and the Navy is choosing when to reveal and when to hide. That combination of proof and mystery is part of the weapon's power. The next signal was where the Navy chose to send it. USS Preble shifted forward to Yokosuka, Japan, the heart of 7th Fleet and the crucible of maritime competition.
In 2024, US Navy destroyer USS Preble successfully tested the Helios system.
It was more than a home port change. It placed a directed energy warship directly on the front line of the Pacific Balance. From there, the reach covers the East China Sea, the Bashi Channel, and the choke points around Taiwan. These waters are where surveillance planes shadow destroyers, militia boats trail convoys, and Coast Guard cutters push boundaries under the flag of patrol. It is the exact environment for Helios to prove its worth: contested, crowded, and politically sensitive. In gray zone encounters, the aim is pressure without open fire. Chinese UAVs probe close to hulls. Militia craft swarm and cut across bows. Maritime patrol aircraft circle at standoff ranges, their cameras feeding targeting chains ashore. A missile response would be dramatic and escalate instantly. A laser's effect can be selective, silent, and deniable. That spectrum of options is what makes Helios a commander's tool. At low settings, the optical dazzler floods hostile sensors, whitening their feeds until they are useless. It looks like a technical glitch, not a shot fired. Step higher, and the hard beam can cook a quadcopter battery or burn through a propeller blade. The result is the same. The threat drops from the sky or stops dead in the water, without a fireball for propaganda. The integration with Aegis means it is never acting alone. Radar detects the track. Electro-optical eyes refine it. Helios engages seamlessly, like any other weapon in the ship's arsenal. To the operator, it feels like firing a missile. To the target, it feels like vanishing. The kill chain stays tight, but the evidence chain dissolves. That absence of spectacle has real political weight. A drone that simply falls into the sea leaves no dramatic image to broadcast. No plume, no flash, no intercept trail. The adversary is denied the theater that often fuels escalation. If an aircraft goes blind or a boat stalls with no visible cause, whose story prevails? The lack of proof becomes its own form of dominance. Plausible deniability at sea is not about concealment of unlawful action. It is about control. It allows a destroyer to shield itself from harassment without granting the opponent the image of victimhood. In waters where a single viral clip can spiral into a diplomatic crisis, removing the spectacle changes the game. The deployment signals that Helios is more than a prototype. It is being folded into everyday presence missions, where sailors stand watches, ships shadow fleets, and pressure is applied by inches rather than volleys. In that space between peace and open conflict, a weapon that can erase without a trace may be more influential than a missile battery waiting in silence. The shift it introduces strikes at the foundation of China's anti-access strategy. That network depends on 2 steps: finding the target and overwhelming it. Without reliable eyes, the salvos stumble before they ever launch. Every kill chain begins with sensing. Satellites sweep orbits, coastal radars scan wide arcs, and patrol aircraft fly with cameras fixed on U.S. ships. Drones fill the gaps, hovering close enough to track movements and feed targeting data. Helios tilts the balance here. A dazzle beam can blind optics, while a hard beam cuts electronics or burns through housings. The result is the same. Spotters lose their sight. When those sensors fade, the quality of the cue degrades. Missiles might still fire, but they fire with less accuracy, more delay, and more risk of missing altogether. That blunting effect reaches far beyond the single drone or aircraft it strikes. It erodes confidence across the entire system, undermining the saturation strategy before it begins. The saturation tactic relies on math. Launch enough cheap drones or boats and defenders exhaust their magazines of expensive interceptors. For years, this equation favored the attacker. Lasers shift the denominator. A beam costs dollars in electricity. not millions in hardware, and its magazine is as deep as the ship's generators can run. Suddenly, forcing a defender to spend big on every shot is no longer guaranteed. This is why analysts highlight directed energy as a counter-pressure. RAND studies describe U.S. forces being squeezed by swarms that arrive from multiple domains. A laser aboard turns those swarms into cues, engaging each target in sequence at the speed of light. What once threatened to overwhelm becomes manageable, provided tracking holds and dwell times stay short. Countermeasures will come. Engineers sketch reflective coatings to bounce light, evasive maneuvers to break the beam, and aerosol clouds to scatter energy. Some will buy moments of relief. Yet coatings ablate under heat, erratic motion can be tracked with precision optics, and smoke obscures an attacker's own vision as much as the defender's. Even weather, which degrades propagation, cuts both ways and complicates both sides. What emerges is another layer of respect. Adversaries cannot dismiss lasers as gimmicks once they appear in fleet service. They must factor them into timing, tactics, and propaganda planning. The danger is not only being struck, it is losing the story, with no smoke or wreckage to show an audience. The reality is that every breakthrough comes with limits, and for lasers, those limits begin with the air itself.
Helios stands for High Energy Laser with integrated optical dazzler and surveillance.
Water vapor, sea spray, and dust scatter light. Fog and rain scatter it even more. A clear day stretches the reach of a beam, while a humid storm can cut it in half. This is physics, not a flaw. A laser needs a clean path to deliver heat to its target. The longer it travels through dense air, the more energy it sheds before it ever arrives. Engineers call this thermal blooming, when the very beam heats the air in front of it and begins to blur its own focus. In the maritime boundary layer, where humidity and turbulence never rest, that challenge is constant. The answer has never been to expect perfection. The answer is to stack layers. Lasers provide speed-of-light defense, but missiles and guns remain vital partners. Smarter aim points, steadier tracking, and increasing raw power all help offset what the weather takes away. But the doctrine itself assumes variety. Helios is a tool in a kit, not the kit itself. Power and cooling set the second boundary. A destroyer can generate tens of megawatts for propulsion and systems, but every kilowatt dedicated to a laser must be stabilized and cooled. 60 kilowatts of directed energy is roughly enough to supply a neighborhood, and all of it has to stay focused in a pencil-sized beam without overheating its source. Cooling loops, radiators, and shipboard space are finite. That is why the Navy fields Helios alongside other systems instead of declaring it the single answer. Behind the physics and the hardware sits a supply chain. Fiber lasers use rare earth-doped glass, ytterbium being the most common ingredient. Processing that material is a global business, and China dominates refining. The Navy's adoption of lasers is therefore tied to broader industrial policy, securing access to minerals that feed not only consumer electronics, but directed energy weapons as well. Cyber and electronic warfare form the last layer of concern. A laser beam cannot be hacked, but the network that guides it can. Helios lives inside the Aegis combat system, hardened like every other weapon node, but still a digital surface to defend. Electromagnetic pulses, spoofed signals, and cyber intrusions all target the integration layer rather than the beam itself. Naval doctrine already trains for this, treating Helios as one more effector inside a resilient web. In the end, lasers carry the same rule as any naval weapon. They are powerful inside their envelope and unreliable outside it. Weather trims the envelope, power caps it, supply chains sustain it, integration protects it. What remains is still transformative, but only when commanders understand both its reach and its restraint. The next horizon is scale, and it is already being written into contracts. Land-based prototypes are crossing into the 300 kilowatt range, enough energy to light an entire town block, all concentrated into a pinpoint. The Army speaks openly of half-megawatt beams, and those numbers are no longer promises on slides. They are hardware in delivery. At sea, the challenge is tighter. Space, weight, and cooling demand every watt be justified. Yet even within those margins, the trajectory points upward. A destroyer that once carried a 60 kilowatt weapon will in time mount something 4 or 5 times stronger, shrinking dwell times and multiplying the number of targets a single ship can service.
Helios is a 60 kilowatts high-energy laser capable of engaging targets at the speed of light.
What feels like a warning shot today will look like a sustained defense tomorrow. Artificial intelligence sharpens the edge further. Tracking dozens of drones across the radar and optical picture is beyond human speed. AI-linked systems close loops in milliseconds, handing the beam from one target to the next without hesitation. A watch team that once juggled bearings now oversees a machine-speed defense net. The rhythm of combat shifts from human reaction to algorithmic precision. Allies are racing the same clock. Britain's Dragonfire proved its burn in 2024. Israel's Iron Beam is built to swat rockets and drones with electricity instead of interceptors. European frigates carry laser demonstrators, and Japan is fielding mobile systems with eyes toward navalization. The coalition sprint means Helios is not an isolated American step, but the first page of a global chapter. The direction points toward fleets of manned and unmanned ships, each carrying its own beam. Small surface vessels patrolling like sentinels. Subsurface drones rising to add energy at choke points. Every platform feeding into a wider web that decides, tracks, and fires without waiting for a captain to shout an order. Above that web, space already plays its role. Satellites cue targets, passing tracks down to ships that can act instantly. This is not about orbital lasers frying hulls. Physics and treaties rule that out. It is about fusing spaceborne sensing with sea-based energy, collapsing the time between spotting a threat and erasing it. The logical end state is automation. A captain defines boundaries and rules of engagement. Within those lines, the system defends itself at the speed of light. Warfighting at human scale becomes warfighting at machine scale, where milliseconds decide whether a drone strikes or disappears into the sea. Silent beams, invisible battles, and a future where war leaves no smoke behind. Helios is more than a weapon. It's a shift in how power is shown, denied, and remembered. Stay with us for the next chapter in naval technology, where the calm after the shot may be louder than the strike itself.